Okay, girls, as I told you, today we're going to be taking some notes on Chapter 19, and we're actually also going to take a couple on Chapter 20 today. So if you want to pause at any time to go download your Chapter 19 and Chapter 20 outlines, they are on Moodle now. Now the Chapter 19 outline starts with material that you covered by the activity in class yesterday, so just find the point in the outline financial collapse where we're going to begin today, okay? So, financial collapse, the activity left off with the crash of the stock market, also known as Black Tuesday, October 29th, 1929. That's pretty easy to remember, October 29. But this crash signaled the beginning of what we know as the Great Depression. Okay, so the crash was the beginning of it. And the Great Depression is the period in time from 1929 to 1940 where the economy plummeted and unemployment skyrocketed. The crash alone was not the only cause of the Depression. We're going to talk about some of the other causes in a second. Financial collapse continued. As a result of the stock market crash, banks and other businesses are also going to begin to fail. With banks, after the crash, many withdrew money, all of their money, from their banks. And then banks start to go bankrupt and are forced to shut down. So many withdrew money from banks, so banks start to go bankrupt, and they collapse. Think about it. The only way banks work is if people are constantly putting in money and taking out money. The bank can't afford to stay open if everyone withdraws all of their money from their accounts. With businesses, something similar. People aren't buying as many things during the beginning of the Depression. People cannot afford to buy as many things, so businesses have to close. And as a side tangent of that, employees lose their jobs, if they worked at these businesses. So people were not buying things, businesses closed, employees lost their jobs. So now there's even less money. All right, we're going to ignore this GNP for now. Okay, worldwide shockwaves. At this time, the U.S. was not importing as many goods from Europe. So they are also affected. If we're not, buying as many goods as consumers from Europe, it's going to hurt their economy as well. So it's kind of like a domino or ripple effect. I do want you to know it was already harder for foreign countries to sell in the U.S. because we had passed the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act. And this is on the PowerPoint for spelling, okay? We had already passed the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which is historically the highest tariff in American history. So obviously, they're not going to make as much money anyway with the higher tax. Now, on a side effect from this, if Europe's economy is ill affected because we are applying tariffs, what do you think the side effect is going to be, or the repercussion for us will be? Europe is going to apply tariffs on us, so we won't be able to export as many goods out of the country and make money. So it's harder for us to sell goods, which is also bad for us. So the Depression really is just this vicious cycle. Okay, before we end on this little section, before we get to the hardship, I do want to talk about the 5 causes of the Great Depression that you need to know. Cause number 1, tariffs, a combination of tariffs really, tariffs and war debt policies that cut down the foreign market for American goods. Okay, tariffs and war debt policies that cut down the foreign market for American goods. And the war debt stuff is stemming from World War I. Second cause, a crisis in the farm sector. Farmers were in absolute crisis right now because of overproduction, thus a much higher supply than demand, thus lowering their prices. They're not able to maintain their prices, and we'll talk about that. The third issue is credit. This is a combination of things. 1, the availability of it. People are spending it, or not spending, it's not their money. They're using credit too much as a payment method. And this is going to lead to personal debt. And that's going to hurt the stock market because the money is not really there as it appears to be because of all the personal debt. And especially when people are buying on margin, as you learned yesterday, which is when you're kind of buying stock via layaway. You're essentially using credit to purchase stock. You're not actually spending your own money. The fourth cause of the Great Depression was an unequal distribution of income. An unequal distribution of income. And this is the rich are very few, and most people are becoming pretty poor. And the last of the causes is, of course, Black Tuesday, the great stock market crash. Okay, now we are going to transition to the second section, and I have a different PowerPoint, the hardship and suffering during the Depression. Okay, we will first compare the difference between the Depression in the cities and Depression in, my favorite word, rural areas. So overall, people were very devastated by the Depression. In the cities, people lost their jobs. They were evicted from their homes. And they had no food. So ways that the cities tried to fix this, or ways people would try to bounce back from that, couple things here. They would build what we call shanty towns. And I have that spelling on the PowerPoint, but it's SHANTY towns, one word, shanty towns. And shanty towns are little towns of shacks made of scrap material, whether it be old wood or tin. So I have some pictures I'll show you in a second. But the second thing I want you to know about the cities is that this is where we see soup kitchens and bread lines start to develop. And they would offer free food provided by charity. They would offer free food provided by charity. Here are some pictures if you want to focus on the video so you can see. So this is a a soup kitchen slash just a charity organization offering free soup, coffee, and donuts for the unemployed. There's a soup kitchen. Okay, this would be a shanty town. So you see the little shacks all in a cluster. They're kind of fenced in, but they are outside of the city. You would expect to see this in a more rural area, but they are outside of the city. Okay, the Depression in rural areas. Farmers, they were used to growing their own food. That's how they would feed their families. But because of their crisis, over 400,000 farmers lost their land at this time. They couldn't afford to keep it. Many will return to tenant farming. To make matters worse, we have an event known as the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl is happening at this time, and that's where drought and high winds caused dust storms all over the Midwest. Drought and high winds caused dust storms all over the Midwest, forcing many farmers and their families to move west towards California. Causing many farmers and their families to move west to California. So some images here. This is what it may look in the more rural areas of the country due to the Dust Bowl. Looks pretty scary. Oh yes, and Route 66 kind of comes to be a well-traveled road at this time, that it was the easiest way for Midwesterners to cut across west to California. So if you were wondering some of the historical significance of Route 66, and I hope some of you have traveled there, it's pretty cool. And it goes back to the Great Depression. Okay, so what were all the effects of the Depression on families? Most families felt a sense of unity. Most families felt a sense of unity. They would stay home and entertain themselves. So good bonding time. They would stay home and entertain themselves. So board games became popular, particularly the one you see on the screen, Monopoly. Board games became very popular. In some cases, families did break apart. Men would leave their families to look for a better job. Many left because they were depressed. And these men